VocalEye Almost Live Zoom. You Can't Get There From Here. Volume 2, Part 2. Hosted by Amy Amantea. With special guests Joeita Gupta, Christine Malec, and JJ Hunt.
So welcome to the VocalEye Almost Live event. My name is Amy Amantea. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator here at VocalEye. I'm your host for these Almost Live events, and I'm a member of the blind community. I'm so proud to be a member of the blind community. And as I just started to say, a big thank you to our donors and supporters. I just can't say it enough. You all have been really fantastic. And there's a link that's always posted in the chat if you feel like you have capacity to make a financial contribution. But the letters of support and the testimonials that have come in have been so wonderful to read. So thank you all, and keep those coming. They're really helpful to be able to share with our funders the impact that this type of programming is making on the community. And I enjoy reading them very much, and I appreciate the time it takes. If you happen to be watching this episode tonight, this almost live episode tonight, on our YouTube channel, please hit like and subscribe. Ingrid, who typically does our land acknowledgement, is not with us this evening, so I'm going to offer the land acknowledgement this evening. So I want to just start off by acknowledging that VocalEye is broadcasting to you all from the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. This is in particular the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And so one of the things that I was learning about the Squamish Nation, because it happens to be the lands that I am most prominently situated on, where I am here in colonial North Vancouver, was learning a little bit about language history. And so I want to share with you a bit about what I learned. So Squamish language is an independent language, but it belongs to the Salish language family. So I just said that this is the Coast Salish peoples, and the Squamish and the Musqueam and the Tsleil-Waututh are a part of the Coast Salish peoples. So the Salish languages, historically, there were 23 different Salish languages. And these languages were spoken, and these are all colonial occupied territories now, but parts of southern British Columbia, throughout Washington state, along the Oregon coast, and into Idaho and Montana. So the Coast Salish peoples, there's a vast language history around these regions. And the whole Salish language of Salish language families consist of these branches of language. And each of the branches are very similar to each other in terms of their content, but have slightly different like meanings and pronunciations and variations within the language, but they're all quite similar to each other. It just sort of changes based on region. And that the Squamish language in and of itself is just one of 10 languages that belong to the Squamish peoples and the Coast Salish bunch of languages. So that's a lot of information to kind of untangle, but I think it's important as we reflect today on what we've learned about the loss of Indigenous languages. And so I really just wanted to acknowledge the history and the multitude of languages. And these are just the history of the Coast Salish folks and their language families. So I wanted to offer that this evening as a part of my land acknowledgement, because as I listen to more and more Indigenous folks that I'm in spaces with, I find the languages very beautiful. And I certainly, with my my settler ear, cannot tell the languages apart, but they're so beautiful to listen to. And so the loss of language is really quite devastating, both culturally, but I think just to humanity in general. So that's what I'd like to offer this evening as the land acknowledgement. And just another big welcome to folks on this Wednesday, July the 6th, 2022. Tonight, we're proud to offer you our almost live event, number 91. What are we going to do when we hit 100? I don't know. Stay tuned. Tonight is You Can't Get There From Here. These are volume 2 from the Factory Theatre in Toronto. And we've got, of course, as always, special guests with us. You'll be familiar with JJ Hunt. You'll be familiar with Christine Malec. And some of you may know Joeita Gupta, but she's new to our space. So I want to just welcome JJ, Christine, and Joeita to the space. Hello, friends. Your boxes will appear any moment on my screen. I see a box.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having us, Amy.
We've got everybody. We've got everybody, or we will have everybody momentarily. So let's bring in JJ and Christine. There we go. We've got everybody. Well, welcome from the future. Again, I know many folks on our guest list tonight are from the future. So I hope dinner was good.
Oh, delicious.
Delicious.
You're going to love it.
I'm gonna love it. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So welcome. I mean, I wanted to start. Listen, JJ and Christine, you have been in this space so many times, folks know you, but Joeita's new. So I think maybe we'll flip things up and start with Joeita so that folks can get a little like, who's Joeita?
Sure. So I'll keep it brief. My name is Joeita. I'm the host and producer of a show called The Pulse, which airs Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific on Accessible Media Inc. My pronouns are she and her. I'm joining you today from Toronto, which is, of course, the people who live in Toronto, of course, are signatories to the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. So in sort of recognition of the land acknowledgement that we did, kind of recognizing that we have people here from various places on Turtle Island going coast to coast. And I am so delighted about the conversation about the Salish language. I learned a lot just in the last 5 minutes. So that's a really auspicious start to the evening. And I'm really delighted to be here today.
It's one of the things that Deanna taught us, who was on the VocalEye team as an intern from Adler University, who identifies as Indigenous, and was teaching us a bit about the kinds of things to bring into our land acknowledgements as a settler, right? Name, explain, relate. And those are so I hold that very dear, that learning, because I think it's important for all of us who identify as settlers to join in the work, right? Thank you, Joeita. Let's have a little reminder of who Christine is in the space. Christine's even guest hosted in the space, so not unfamiliar to us.
Hello. My name's Christine Malec. I'm a member of the blind community in Toronto as well. I do a few things. I'm co-host with JJ Hunt of the Talk Description to Me podcast. I'm a musician and a consultant in the arts. And I just want to compliment you as well on your land acknowledgements. They're always so beautiful. They're not just for form's sake. They've really moved into the next level, which is what the land acknowledgements were meant to do. And so I just want to, give you the double thumbs up for your land acknowledgements. They're lovely. And so glad to be here. Always fun to connect with the VocalEye group. You have such a lovely team here. And I'm nervously looking forward to the plays this evening. The word horror was used. I got a thin skin and it's late here. So, I'm glad we're getting the anxiety inducing one done first.
This is kind of funny, Christine, because it's when people say to the blind community, "Are you afraid of the dark?" It's like, what choice do I have?
Hope not.
But when you talk about horror, I think, okay, are our lights out? Are our curtains drawn? Are the ghosts in the shadows? It's dark all the time in my world. What the heck? JJ, my friend, who the heck is JJ?
Hello.
What do you bring into the space tonight?
So yeah, I'm JJ Hunt. I'm an audio describer here in Toronto, Tuckeronto. So I describe anything that's in front of me. So film, television, theater, buildings, gestures, squirrels. It really doesn't matter. If it's got a visual component, I'm happy to describe it. And so I'm always happy to kind of bring that mindset, bring that lens to the Almost Live space. So thanks for having me again, Amy.
Hey, this is a team effort. So I'm really happy to be in space with all of you, because the three of you have such wonderful minds. And sometimes I feel like I can't quite keep up. But I'm working on it. I'm a human. I'm working on it. But I think it's really important too that we have folks from Toronto, because Factory Theatre is in Toronto, and the content often is largely related to areas within Toronto. And so for those of us who aren't local to the area, it's nice to have some folks like you all who are rooted there and can talk about spaces. And I mean, I remember the first time when we played Volume 1 last season, there were 5 plays. There were 5 plays in Volume 2. Tonight we're going to play the remaining 2 in the series. When you were talking about Cabbagetown, and I was like, what the heck is Cabbagetown? Right? So it's like this, it helps to root us in the storytelling. So when we have some familiarities and some history from your all's perspective, I think that's super helpful.
I always like to just give a gentle, reminder to the Canadian members on the call. Toronto people are nice. We're nice people here. It's a lovely city. It has many good qualities. We don't
You are
have an
nice.
inflated view of ourselves. We're humble and kind and gentle. And so if you're from the US and you don't know what I'm talking about, there's sometimes a perception in other parts of the country that people from Toronto think that Toronto is the center of the universe. It's not true. It's not true.
It's
not
just
true.
off the center. It's just
No. JJ, you're not helping.
Just slightly off to the center. That's funny. I love it. I love it. But center enough for egocentric purposes.
exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Love it. So where exactly, JJ, is the Factory Theater located? And we talk about this every time we play these, just in case there are new folks in the space or they want a reminder. But what tell us a bit about Factory Theater?
Yeah, so Factory Theater is a downtown theater. It's at the corner of Bathurst and Adelaide. It's a really interesting building. It's actually two buildings that have been joined together. It founded in 1970 as the Factory Theater Lab, well known for producing Canadian plays. And I think it was actually the first to produce Canadian plays exclusively. And like I said, two main buildings that kind of are stuck together. The first building is a grand old house known as the John Mulvey House, and it was built in 1896. The second is an addition. It's a large building built in 1910. The house part is a large blonde brick home in what's known in the Queen Anne Gothic style. So it's got a quirky asymmetrical design, irregular gabled roofs, dormers, old sash windows, and some fancy gingerbread trim. So that really fancy trim that's along the roof lines, it looks like the icing that drips off a gingerbread house. So it's called gingerbread trim. And it's got ivy growing up the building. So very old Queen Anne Gothic building. And then the addition is a boxy building, but it's boxy in the same kind of matching blonde brick. It's got two sets of large double doors painted red. There's an arched transom window above, and then between the two sets of double doors is a multi-story curved bay window with a red half dome roof. The addition, that's where the actual theater spaces are. The main space has, I think, 200 fixed rate red seats, plus a balcony with an ornate gold facade that's original to the building. There's also a studio theater that's like a black box space, meaning that it has all black walls and black ceiling and black floors and can be reconfigured in lots of different ways with movable risers and so forth. So that's the Factory Theater, downtown Toronto, Bathurst and Adelaide. Yeah, there you go. You
Just
got a
brought
picture
it up
there
on
in
my
your
background, my virtual
Perfect.
background. I'm just gonna move my head slightly so that
That's
anybody who wants a little partial can see kind of what the Factory Theater looks like. Why is it called the Factory Theater? Do you know?
That's a good question. I'm not sure where that name comes from because it's a house. I mean, I would have presumed
Yeah.
if it was a factory first and turned into a theater, but this house, I'm not entirely sure where the name comes from. Does anyone else know? Joeita? Christine?
No,
I
I
don't
see.
know. Now I'm curious. Now I want to know.
For volume 3, there's a little fact-finding mission when volume 3 comes out.
That's right, exactly.
Awesome. We're just about ready to roll with our first episode here, but I know that we're going to introduce it because JJ, you go through. I mean, you've all had a chance to listen to them in advance, but JJ pulls out some stuff like pre-show notes to help set up some characters and some relationships and things like that. So Doubletree is the first one we're going to listen to. JJ, what can you offer us as we go into this?
Doubletree is a story of Sydney and Tara. They're a young couple, and they move to Toronto when they inherit an apartment. And of course, if you get free real estate in the city of Toronto, you take it because real estate is very valuable. But this story quickly turns from a very happy story to a very terrifying story. This apartment is there are some issues with the apartment, and the story, the horror of the story, is told through the making of a crime podcast, which is kind of interesting. So in terms of setting up some of the visuals, the apartment that they have is located on Elm Street. And Elm Street is a street in downtown Toronto. It runs east-west, just a few blocks north of Dundas, kind of from the edge of Chinatown, past Sick Kids Hospital and Bay Street to Yonge Street, just north of the Eaton Center. But it's not a very well-known street. I mean, I've been a Toronto guy all my life. I actually had to look up where Elm Street was. It's not one of the more well-known downtown streets. I have a feeling the Elm Street has more to do with the Nightmare on Elm Street more than this street in Toronto.
I love the reference to the Nightmare.
Exactly. Yes. So Christine, I don't know, you ready?
I'm hugging myself and
have you got some kind of teddy bear or fidget spinner or something?
I'll find
nearby?
one.
For a little bit of a horror night. It's not Halloween. We're a little early, but
this is not my genre of comfort.
Well, you'll do fine.
Thank you.
Joeita, how do you do with scary stuff?
It depends on the kind of scary. Like, I don't like bad horror where you kind of get the jump scare. I don't like that. But I think one of the things that I really appreciate about this this play that we're about to listen to is that you don't get the jump scare. I think it's very suspenseful. It's the psychological horror. It's really quite gripping. So I did listen to it once, and I was glad it was not the middle of the night when I listened to it the first time around. So I mean, I think for this time around, I'm just gonna I don't know, just close my eyes and let me be taken away with it.
Yeah. Go grab someone you love in your house and just cuddle up. Yeah. Anybody got a guide dog or something nearby? Or any kind of cuddly, soft thing. I mean, we'll throw out the blanket content warning as we do for these, because there's always some interesting stuff. And friends, manage your own engagement with the work, right? We obviously would love you to stick around and listen to it, all of it. I certainly will, but you have autonomy to be able to come and go and engage and disengage as you need to. So I encourage you all to do that. JJ, any last things that we need to know about Doubletree before we jump on in and have a listen?
No, I think that those are the key pieces there's not a lot of visual information that's required. There's lots of interesting themes we can talk about when we're done, but I don't want to give away too many spoilers on this one. So
and the two characters were Sydney and
the two main characters, it was Sydney and Tara, and then I forget the name of the podcaster at the moment, but he identifies himself pretty early on.
Okay, that's great. All right, friends. Rick, when you're ready, we're gonna have a listen to Doubletree. And before we do, I just want to mention that this one is done by Amy Lee Lavoie and Omari Newton. And Omari Newton's been in the space with us many times, and Amy Lee Lavoie is his wife. And folks may remember Omari Newton's name from the most recent thing he shared with us, which was Redbone Coonhound, that audio play. So it's like they're getting work all over Turtle Island, which is loveliness. All right, friends, let's sit back and have a listen. It's about 32 minutes-ish of Doubletree.
Due to copyright restrictions, excerpts of this presentation have not been recorded. Please check below for more information, including links to the material if it is hosted elsewhere.
Well, welcome back. That was Doubletree. Anybody skin crawling just a little bit? How you doing there, Christine? Are you hanging in there? Okay, friends. I'm curious about our thoughts, and the VocalEye team may have to ask you to unmute, but some very interesting themes. I mean, JJ, right at the top, you kind of alluded to the fact that there were many interesting themes here that we could discuss. One of the glaringly obvious ones to me is the theme of racism. Here and whether I had this discussion. I have to just say I have this discussion with a couple of colleagues the other day about the difference between racism that they've experienced in Vancouver, in Vancouver where we are, and Alberta. I know that's a city and a province, but but the difference that they had felt living in Alberta versus now moving into Vancouver. And we were talking about the difference between like that overt racism and the insidious racism, where you can't quite tell what somebody's thinking even though they're saying stuff. So I'd love to hear from all of you about how this impacted you, in what ways this might have impacted you from the racism theme. Anybody want to start? I can pick on you. to start.
It's okay. I actually have speaking as a white person for sure. So, that's just obvious that I can't speak from the experience of it. But one thing that I think about living in Toronto, which is very diverse ethnically, and there are people of color here from many different places and people of color here who were born here. And I often wonder about their experience. So, someone who I meet who's from Cameroon versus someone of the same skin tone who was raised here, or someone who came from the US, or the different experiences and what the overlap is. And I have no answer to that. It's just something that I wonder about. And yeah, I have no particular conclusion about it. I just wish I knew enough people well enough to ask, to get some insights about that, because Toronto is very diverse and there are people. I actually think in Toronto there's more people who were not born here than people who were born here. So
Mhm.
the diversity of experience is important as well. Yeah, that's and yeah, speaking as a white person, I don't think I can speak to anything deeper than a curiosity. End of thought.
Joeita,
Jump in.
yeah,
Oh,
jump
no,
on in, Joeita.
Sure. I think when we talk about race in the context of this particular audio play, you have to talk about race in terms of memory. And I think the theme of memory in relation to people's lived experience of racism and how the historic significance of being a person of color or being white in Canada, they tease memory in many different ways in the play, starting with the audio diary, where you're kind of creating memorabilia or reflections or recollections for their as yet unborn child. And then you start to have this other aspect of memory where you've got family lineage or legacy, where this apartment comes to Tara through her family, and she's a white woman. And there's this really interesting segment, which I kind of feel like we could spend a few minutes talking about, where they say, this is, they talk about this inheritance being a result of white privilege, that she has come into this apartment in Toronto where real estate is really expensive. There's this intergenerational wealth gap that exists. So there's an element of white privilege operating on the level of a woman who out of the blue gets this inheritance in Elm Street, downtown Toronto. Is not just, a shoebox somewhere. This is a really spacious and apartment. It's in downtown Toronto, so it's an incredible asset. And so she comes about inheriting this because of her family's unearned white privilege. And as a counter to that, I think it's really interesting that her husband, Sydney, points out that this was probably a result of the dispossession of people of color. And that theme of dispossession is something that I kind of tied back to memory, because we often forget the history of St. John's Ward, where Elm Street is. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the author, but a while back, I'm sure JJ or Christine know it, but a while back, someone wrote a book called The Ward, and it talks about the history of that portion of downtown Toronto where Elm Street is. It used to be a fairly rundown part of the city, and it was a home to, and this speaks to Christine's point, a lot of new immigrants, Jewish, Chinese, a lot of Black and Indigenous folks. And now if you look at Elm Street, it's become, if you walk down Elm Street today, you're going to walk down like a fancy English pub. There's a spa, there's a really high-end boutique. It's right up by Bay Street, which is the center of commerce. So it's also about the gentrification that takes place and how there's an erasure of memory, and which is sort of accompanied by the dispossession of people of color. So the race theme plays out in this in so many interesting ways that you could actually just spend all the evening it's like an onion where you could kind of like go through it layer by layer by layer to peel back the different ways in which memory resonates with space and the historic sort of resonance of what it means to be Black or white in Canada today.
That's a very, very astute observation, Joeita, because it makes me think about, again, all, like you said, like an onion, all the layers that are here that a person can unpack. But we hear it right off the top. Like there's no holds barred here in terms of when they bring that content in. Like even, you know, in the very beginning of the interview, and you know, the very white podcaster almost being afraid to be in a space with this Black, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Sorry, JJ, I'll give you some space to
no,
share
of
too.
course. Absolutely. The idea of inheritance, what is actually being inherited and what is actually being passed down generation to generation. I also found that, you know, that quite interesting. And as Christine said, speaking as a white settler, you know, that obviously has to be said when you're having conversations like this. I found one of the things that stood out for me was this Black man's relationship, presumed relationship with the police. Because, you know, as Christine mentioned, of course, Toronto's an incredibly diverse city, but that doesn't mean that that people of color have a positive relationship with the Toronto Police Department. Far from it. This is a real issue in Toronto. The Toronto Police Department has a reputation for targeting the Black community and for being excessively violent with Black men. And statistically speaking, that is an earned reputation. And that's actually according to police departments data. Like there was a report released just last month on June 15th, where Toronto police officers used force. This report, you know, shone a light on the fact. Did you see that? It was, I mean, It was incredible. Some of the stats, the Toronto police officers use force on Black Torontonians about 4 times more often than their share of the population. Black Torontonians are 5 times more likely to have force used against them than white Torontonians. And Black people were twice as likely to be confronted by police for things like ticketing and questioning. And there have been some very, very high profile assaults by white police officers against Black Torontonians. Devontae Miller comes to mind. This was a 2016 case. In 2016, then 19-year-old Devontae Miller, who's a Black man, was assaulted by an off-duty police officer named Michael Theriault and Theriault's brother Christian. And they beat Devontae Miller with a pipe and they blinded him in one eye. They were charged with assault. And I believe Michael Theriault was convicted, though of a lesser assault, and Christian was not. I mean, these kinds of incidents are very real. So if you are Sydney in this story, and you are thinking about what do I do in this situation, that fear of going to the police, going to the authorities, that struck me as very real.
Yeah, and I think, you know, from my perspective, again, I'm a white settler too. What I think is interesting to me and what is important here is that it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that provokes conversation. And it to some extent, it doesn't, you know, give you a glimpse into the life of somebody who's not your lived experience, but it is about listening and about recognizing that these atrocities existed and continue to exist. And so I think storytelling like this is super powerful, if not for that reason alone, right? The representation, the hearing this, the truth, and it doesn't, I don't think it matters how it's packaged, right? Like right now it's packaged in what we would probably refer like is a fictional story. But that doesn't mean that there isn't any less truth to some of the components of the story. Joeita's right. We could talk about this particular aspect for the entirety of the evening, but I'm curious about other themes that came up for you all, or ways in which this particular, like how the story was told through this, you know, this podcasting kind of interview style, whether that resonated with you or didn't.
I'm sure JJ will agree. We were both privately, independently of each other, sniggering with contempt at the mechanics of the podcast building, because that is not how it's
Not
done.
quite.
As podcasters, we can attest that was a plot device,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Of course.
sure. But that said, when I hear stories like this, I always want to, because I'm an agnostic in every sense. And so I always want to ask, why did the authors choose the paranormal? Because I don't think that's the first time we've had a paranormal theme here. And
Mm.
I didn't have an answer until actually after Joeita, after you spoke, and I was kind of processing what you'd said. And then it kind of came together for me, Amy, when you spoke about it, was that it's not necessarily that the author is a believer in paranormal phenomena, or that the author just wanted to tell it in a ghost story format, but I think thematically there's a way that the paranormal and the haunting aspects speak to what Joeita referred to in terms of memory and post-traumatic stress and intergenerational trauma. So I think those themes are kind of tied together partly by the genre and the paranormal content, but being reported on by a white guy. And yeah, the cassette recorder, that was a bit hard to swallow. Yeah, I'm super creeped out. And Amy, she tried to check in with me at the beginning, and my audio was muted. But yep, I'm super creeped out. So yeah, I'm gonna go drink some cherry Kool-Aid or something. Grab my blanket for the second. The second one. End of thought.
Any other themes that came up for you all? Joeita, how about for you? Is there other things in this that really resonated or hated?
Yeah, there were two things, I mean, just related to race, kind of unpacking the interracial marriage.
Mhm.
I think that's a really, I mean, I am in an interracial marriage. I know that outside of Toronto and Vancouver, interracial marriages are not all that common. With that said, the dynamics of their relationship is so interesting to think about who gets uprooted from, yeah, and why, because in the right of the top there, he says, hold on, this is not going to be, in the hood, poverty porn. I thought that was really well said. But he's a UBC grad, he's employed, they are not living paycheck to paycheck, and he's on track for tenure. So sounds like they're doing really well. And later on in the podcast, they talk about running through a lot of their money for IVF, and IVF treatments do not come cheap. So again, that shows that they had the ability to, granted, they might have run down their savings, but they had savings to begin with, which is more than you can say for a lot of Canadians today who are in fact going paycheck to paycheck. And yet, the moment this inheritance comes along, you drop everything, your friends, he doesn't have any in Toronto, his family, he doesn't have a connection with them in Toronto, he has no safety net, and you move to this moldering apartment. And that's where intergenerational trauma comes in, and intergenerational, the impact of racism can be felt in the relationship that the couple has, because, by all accounts, they sound like they're really happy with each other and they're excited to welcome a baby. Enter racism, and suddenly their whole dynamic changes. There's this really interesting scene, I caught it the second time around, where he's like, you think we can board this elevator up? Because honestly, you have an elevator an elevator shaft in the second bedroom of your apartment, nothing good will ever come from that. Okay. So he says, can you board this up? And she's like, no, I love it. And she kind of gets to be proprietorial about their space, because it's not really their space, it's her space. And that's so interesting.
Yeah. It's a great
I
observation.
noticed too that I found the tiniest little ray of hope where they could joke about white privilege, and it felt like a really genuine moment where he kind of accuses her. I forget what the context is, but they have a private giggle about it, and that was kind of the most real moment for me in the whole piece, because it showed that they had a level of understanding with each other, at least I hope they did, where they could joke about it. And I felt like it was genuine. They were both in the same place of, looking at it candidly and together.
Oh, for context, for the three of you, because I'm sure that you don't know Omari and Amy, who live here in Vancouver. I know them a little bit in some of my work here. So they are an interracial couple. So Amy's a white woman and Omari is a Black man, and they're an interracial married couple. And so a lot of their work is tackling these, exactly what we're asking ourselves, is these questions, because they pose them in such interesting ways, right? I can't imagine what it's like to be at a dinner party at their house.
I'm scared.
Yeah. And whether the supernatural are there or not. JJ, any thoughts from you before we have a listen to our second audio play?
Oh, I was thinking about that, the interracial relationship, and of course how the at the very end of this piece, it comes back to the very first interrelation, not quite a relationship, but the white woman and the two Black men who she accused, and how it all stems back to the way those two Black men were treated in that moment, and yeah, the idea of that trauma being never dealt with, generation after generation after generation, until it becomes a true horror. Never righted, that wrong never righted, until it festers and grows into something truly vile. Yeah, that's such a haunting notion, and plays out in such a vivid way. They did quite a job of making the sound design in this was intense, right from the depiction of tinnitus, the ringing, which was right on the edge of being tolerable sometimes, and the voices that were recorded, the sound, the way they took that trauma, that horror, and converted it into a soundscape, into a sound design, I thought was really a little too effective.
A bit, yeah, I was just going to say a bit too well done.
Yeah.
They really just threw you right into the crocodile pit right at the beginning.
And I think that folks that really love like supernatural kind of storytelling, that probably like heightens coolness.
Absolutely.
And if it's not your jam, then it's the creep factor is really high.
Yeah. What is it in the chat here? We've got Blair Witch Meets Othello from Doug and Diana.
What?
Yeah, I can.
Yikes.
I have this is a kind of a silly question, but there was a mention to a style of hat, a Ken Gold.
Oh, thank you for remembering to ask that.
And I wrote it down right away. I wrote it down the first time I listened to it, and then where I wrote that down, I have no idea in what document it's in.
Purple.
But I caught what is a Kangol hat? Does anybody know?
Oh, a Kangol hat.
Is it a Kangol? Kangol hat? Yeah, I don't know what that looks like.
Me either. I've never even heard of it.
So it's like a bucket hat. So it's got the brim all the way around, and it comes, so it's like a large fez on top of the head that covers all the way. It's
now you're gonna have to unpack fez, because some people don't know
oh
what
my
fez
goodness!
is.
See, this is what happens. Okay.
Kitchen items, JJ. Stick with kitchen items.
Is it like a serving bowl with a rim around it?
Imagine like a large toilet paper roll around your head, not super tall, right? So it's kind of boxed in like a pillbox hat on top, and then a brim that comes down. Oh my God, I'm just describing one thing with another thing.
Is this like the hat that what was that character Paddington Bear used to wear? It's like they used to be like rain hats almost.
Yeah, it's in that family. It's not.
Can we go back to the toilet paper roll? I was with you till then. You lost me with pillbox and Paddington Bear.
A squat hat on top of the head with a flat top, round all the way around the the circumference of the head, and then above the ears, instead of having a baseball cap brim that comes only down the front, there's a brim that comes all the way around. So
we got to do a whole episode on hats, JJ.
Oh, there you go.
I'm going stove pad. Is that a stove? Never mind.
Oh yeah, that's right.
All the inspiration that comes out of
pork pie hats and there you go.
Pork pie.
I love a nice pork pie hat. Oh,
Really? We got to talk. We'll take this offline so we can bring it back online.
Well, I think it's probably a good time for us to transition into our second audio play and final audio play of the night. So it's also about 34 minutes-ish. But JJ, I'm sure that you've got some stuff to share with us leading into this. So.
Yeah, so this is a comedy, light comedy and fun. So this is a comedy about a young woman named Nikki who is introducing her much older boyfriend named Rich to her gin-fueled mother, Thea. Yeah, so a fun and light. Actually, the house that they go to, Thea's house, is in Cabbagetown, which you referenced earlier.
Yeah.
So Cabbagetown being a kind of a funky residential neighborhood with a very rich history. A lot of the houses that are there were actually built in the 19th and 20th century in the Victorian style. Lots of narrow row houses, 2-story red brick houses with bay windows and dormers. It was very working class. And now, now it's pretty gentrified. In Cabbagetown, you find some very nice houses, but still a very artsy kind of vibe to it, which is reflected. The characters in this piece being a pretty artsy folk. So that's the neighborhood, Cabbagetown. Joeita, are you? I saw you nodding along there. Are you? Do you know Cabbagetown well?
Not too well because I can't afford to live there, but I know it well. But I know it well enough, and I think you really nailed it there. Talk about how it was working class, and I think that's actually where the name comes from. I think at one point people were so poor they could only afford to grow cabbages in their backyard. Now, of course, it's populated with professionals, lawyers, professors, doctors, what have you. So you don't see quite as many cabbages. However, you do see a number of really artsy shops and little cafes and a number of really nice antique stores, if that's your thing as well.
Yeah, pretty boutiquey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have never been, but maybe if I find myself in the Toronto area, I'll have to get a tour from one of you folk of the places to check out. I know that we've got areas in Vancouver, and every modern, many metropolis, I guess, will have something like that, right? The different neighborhoods, they kind of, there's always a working class neighborhood. There's always something that, locals refer to as Skid Row. And I hate that term, but there's really gentrified areas and really posh areas and how society sort of fragmented and segregated into these pots of, anyways, that's a whole other episode that we could get into talking about that.
And there's usually this phenomenon of it's a poor neighborhood, it's working class, but the housing stock is really nice. So the artists move in and then they make the area popular. And then once the area is popular, then the really wealthy people move in. And so first the working class folks, they get bumped out, and then the artists get bumped out. But then you got to bring a few artists back in to make those coffee shops look good, and but that is the cycle that happens over and over and over again.
Wow. Lots to talk about, friends. So I'm sure we'll find many themes and conversation starters in this particular piece. So for now, I'm going to just invite folks to sit back and have a listen to The Artists. This is directed by Kat Sandler, and it's about 34 minutes long. So Rick, when you're ready, hit play.
Due to copyright restrictions, excerpts of this presentation have not been recorded. Please check below for more information, including links to the material if it is hosted elsewhere.
All right, friends, that was The Artists. So welcome back to the space, Christine, Joeita, and JJ. Second time I've listened to that ending now, and here's my question to you all. If you hear this in the mother's voice, that after the song is being played and Richard comes back into the room, is she gonna spill the beans? Because it's like there's this sadness, right? There's like this, just one more time for me, because I'm gonna ruin your life. And I didn't hear it the first time I listened to this, but I'm curious if any of you felt that way about that moment.
That's really interesting. I was certainly wondering and thinking, like, you gotta tell. You gotta, because you can't, that's never going to be held forever.
Nope.
So it's going to come out at some point. So you got to tell, but Oh, for the nice story, for the nice comedic audio play. No, don't tell. Like this is a nice little bow. That's a pretty little song. I
Yeah.
mean, a sad, pretty song, but oh man, you were getting right into it, Amy. You wanted that told right.
I just
You're gonna do it right then and there, right?
It's like when is the other and it's so funny when you've listened to something more than once and you know that the other shoe doesn't drop. But I kept thinking to myself, when is that other shoe gonna drop? Any minute now, she's gonna say something, and of course she doesn't, obviously. But yeah, how was that moment for anybody else? Did anybody else think that, or am I like alone on an island with this one?
No, I don't think she's ever going to tell Nikki about their prior relationship. I think I really got the sense that she was saying goodbye to him and saying goodbye to those memories, because she was going to not think about that anymore, because it's preceded by Richard saying, nice to meet you, Anthea, it's good to finally meet you. Like he's saying in that way, please don't out me, please don't tell her, put your daughter's happiness first. And I think a lot of moms and dads will do that for their kids. I mean, I think she really got a sense that her daughter was extremely happy. And I think it's not that unusual. I mean, parents have in their minds an idea of the kind of person they would want their kid to end up with. And sometimes the person that your kid brings home isn't the kind of person you had in mind. And I think it's a really beautiful play, because I think it resonates on so many different levels. And I think one of the ways in which not that I have kids of my own, but if I ever did have kids, I think I would find myself at that crossroads where, maybe it's not a long lost love that my daughter has brought home or whatever, but, where you have to have this moment of reckoning as a parent where you say, okay, you know what, I had these preconceptions about the kind of person I wanted my son or daughter to end up with, and this is what they brought home, this is who they brought home, and it's the quintessential putting your kid in front of your own preferences. So no, I don't. I think that song, when she says it's just for me, I think it was her sort of saying goodbye to that chapter in her life, because from this point on, Richard was not going to be an old flame. Richard was going to be her son-in-law. And it's an act of sort of her letting go.
Is it the right thing to do though? I don't know. I guess that's what good plays do, right? I say this all the time in this space, is they ask us they force us to have these questions in our mind about what would you do, or how would you approach this? Because I don't know. I think if I had married somebody that my mother had slept with decades earlier, I don't think I would, I'd want to know, and then two, I'd want to avoid that messiness, right? But I don't know.
I do love that moment you point out, Joeita, of Richard saying, "Nice to meet you." Like the hellos and goodbyes all kind of wrapped up together. Like, you're right. She's saying goodbye to him. He's saying hello to her, and he's saying goodbye to the idea of her, and hello to the actual person. He'd been carrying forever and ever this idea of this woman, this older woman who was almost the one, should have been the one. He'd been carrying that forever and ever, and now he's met her, and so time to say goodbye to that person, and instead hello to the real live person who is standing in front of him, who it turns out is going to be his mother-in-law, which is slightly complicated.
And since the mother-in-law is a fan of the sauce, can you imagine, like, where is it in like 5 years time, 10 years time, 11 years time, when the first baby's born, or the second? Like, when does the secret drop? Because as you pointed out, JJ, it's not going to last forever.
That's right. It's coming out at some point. That's right.
There's going to be somebody who knew those two as a couple in there. You know what I mean? Like, somehow it's coming out.
Speaks to the nature of relationships. Some relationships, I mean, it is a commentary on relationships, the permanence of relationships, and that not every relationship has to be permanent. You can have the summertime romance. I mean, we've all had a summertime romance, and that person isn't your happily ever after. That person is there for like 14 days, and maybe you propose them on the 13th day and they turn you down because it's a string ring. And it's a phase you go through in your life. It speaks to the ephemeral nature of some relationships and how that's okay. I mean, I think if it ever did come out, I'm sure Nikki would be flabbergasted. She may feel a little hurt that it was kept from her, but eventually she'll get over it because it's also a commentary on the perceived strength of their relationship. Like he feels like if this is not going to be something that undoes them or that unravels them as a couple. He's saying, I have learned how to love. And I think that's a really powerful piece there as well. You also learn and you to develop as a person to be the kind of person who can be in a mature relationship.
I just want to let folks in our audience know that this is opportunity for you to jump on in, share things that resonated. I'm certainly interested to know what you think about this. Interesting. I don't even know if you can call it a love triangle or what you call it, but it's, and we've already got a couple of hands, like it's polarizing. So let's go to Louise first and then to Lori. So go ahead, Louise.
Good evening, everyone. I first of all say I love both plays for different reasons tonight, but I will spawn on this one especially. When he went outside to have that cigarette, when she let him go, and he said it was nice to meet, I thought she was going to tell her daughter. I thought she was going to tell her daughter then. When she requested her to play the song, I was shocked. But I like I think what you said, someone said about the fact that it was a way for her to say goodbye to him in their relation, the past, and to move into the future. I saw that was when she was singing the song, I felt like, okay, you're saying goodbye to your past, letting your daughter move into the future. Maybe they could come to agreement down the road to share the news, at a time where it could have been appropriate, not in that first meeting. If there was true love between which you felt there was between the daughter and Richard, if there was true love, she would have forgiven what happened in the past.
Oh, you're such an optimist, Louise. I love it.
No,
I love it. I wish I could be more like you.
But no, I believe that the daughter was that kind of personality. Look at the daughter's character. Think of the daughter's character, who she was as a person. She was confident in herself. The mother wasn't. She was an alcoholic or a drinker. The daughter was confident. The mother wasn't. Look at the personalities of both of them. The mother wasn't confident in herself. The daughter was.
You know what the other clue for me, Louise, about how strong these love relationships were and grew to be at the end. I think their loving relationships were stronger at the end of this play than they were at the beginning.
Yes.
And
yes.
For me, the clue is in the title of the play and one line. So the title of the play, The Artists. I was really curious about this and I couldn't figure it out. After I listened to it the first time, I didn't quite get it. Why is it called The Artists? Why is the artist nature? What is it about that's so important? And then in the second listening, I heard a line that Thea said when she was talking about her relationship with her husband. And she said, you really have to love something so much to become a great artist. And so if this is a play about artists, the three of them being artists, it's because, according to Thea, they all love something so much, and it's each other. They have these loving relationships, and for me, that was the big light bulb moment. Like, oh yes, there really is true, genuine love here in these relationships, and that's what makes them all artists.
And the love for the daughter from the mother, but you could tell she was weak in other ways. There was underlying issues in her life somewhere. She couldn't believe someone could love somebody fully. When she was talking.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say, think of the lines to Richard. You can't know you love somebody that fast. You can't know that you're really in love with her. You love me.
Right.
So what she was trying to say is, if you love me, you can't love her. There's no more than one love in life. There's different kinds of love. And I think he said it in one line he said, and these are the words that stands out. And I'm not going to repeat it exactly, but what he was trying to get across was, I loved you, but she's a part of you, that, and plus who she is upon that is what I love. Meaning he loved the mother part of her from the mother character of her, but he loved the fact she was stronger than her mother.
Well, thank you, Louise. I think that's a very interesting insight that you bring to this. Christine, you were about to say something?
I just wonder if I'm the only one who was a bit weirded out that Richard was twice as old as Nikki, like 50 and 25. I don't want to be prudish, but that kind of went.
I'll have to say to you. Go ahead, Joeita. Go ahead.
I was going to say, think about Pierre and Margaret Trudeau. Just, I'm going to say that and leave it at that.
I'm gonna say it's not for me, but whatever other people do, that's their business.
Yeah, I know. I generally believe that too. Like, but it challenged my own biases when I saw a relationship actually happening. Like in theory, I go, yeah, whatever. If people love each other, that's the best thing. But in watching it play out, I was like, yeah,
you wonder what the commonality is. Yeah. Right.
Well, and her, like, she's joking about her supple young body, and I was going.
I was listening for dynamics in that because of that. Like, when were there moments where the power seemed, unequal? Were there moments when she seemed significantly younger in their power dynamics? I wasn't quite catching it.
No,
but,
I didn't either. It's true.
Yeah, but I did the quick math. She's 25, he's 48, and mom is 58. I think that would be how that would play out, because it was the 23 years difference and then 10 years difference. Yeah, so pretty much twice the age.
Yeah. I think maybe I didn't find Richard that sympathetic of a character. I thought it was well done, but it wasn't. Like, I felt like it was well played, but if I met him as a person, I wouldn't warm up to him. So maybe that was the problem.
Interesting. Okay, we've got hands from Lori, Megan, Sharon, and Nancy. So let's do Lori.
Order. Audio now unmuted.
Okay, I would say the first play creeped me out. I do not like mice or rats. So hearing them crawl over that guy, no thank you. I was feeling pretty grossed out because I don't like those things. But I will say for the second play, I felt I'm used to seeing people older than other people. My father was 14 years older than his third wife. So the age wasn't weird for me or anything. But you could tell that there was a lot of, at the end, really, that one chapter was closing, another one was opening with this family, with Richard and everything. That's what I was feeling, that, okay, she's playing the song, which is a beautiful song, but it's just showing, okay, you're playing this for me, but it's closing the chapter with me, but now you're also going to play this for him, and it's opening a new chapter for the two of you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori, for sharing that.
Hand now lowered. Zoom meeting.
Let's go, Megan, Sharon, and then Nancy. So Megan, go ahead and unmute to give Megan a moment.
That was awesome. I love the first one. Like when it almost sounded First Nation, but it also sounded very mysterious. The singing, and when the question was, when he meant Mama Mighty, did he mean the Virgin Mary? And the second one was what religion? Well, what's like when it talks about Negro spirituality, does it mean like Kumi or voodoo? And with the cutting the names out on the tree, that sounded very spiritual. Almost sounded like the spiritual the name, the name, like the tree, the tree, and it sounded very spiritual, and the singing part, it sounded very like, what Negro spirit, what African American spirituality was it? And and also about the night and the mice coming in and going down the shaft, and he said it was like a supernatural power, an abnormal power. Could have been mediumry, or what kind of religion was it?
Anybody want to speak to that? I don't know that they right out came and said that.
Yeah, I'm not sure they identified any a specific religion in that moment. I mean, the spirituals being sung, of course, it's just very powerful to hear that audio. It would and to be speaking in the idea of speaking in voices, speaking in tongues, and then of course the carving in the tree being a direct callback to that first that first encounter that is referenced at the very end of the play with the great grandmother and the two men she accused being hung. So a lot of those parallels, and then of course the mice chewing the feet of the hanging men, and then the mice chewing the filling the elevator, and mice carcasses being around. So lots of those direct parallels between the earliest story and the contemporary story that we heard. Some very, very creepy visuals and images being conjured there for sure.
They probably should have stayed where they were rooted and put the apartment up for sale.
I think so.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan. Sharon, and then Nancy.
Yeah, I thought the first one was pretty creepy. I could have done without the mice. It was creepy enough without the mice, I didn't really need the mice. The second one I really liked, and I thought it was very well calibrated with the relationship between Richard and the mother, that it was 2 weeks. Somehow 2 weeks seemed to me like if it ever came out, which you're right, everything will come out. It will come out. I don't know if it's going to come out tonight. And I think it kind of should maybe come out tonight, because if it comes out later, I think it will only be worse. But somehow that they were involved for 2 weeks, even if it was a very intense 2 weeks, that sort of seems like, if it was 2 months, that would have really been creepy. 2 weeks sort of seems to me, I don't know why, but it seems okay.
Like flash in the pan, right?
Yeah, like 2 weeks, when it was a summer, and yeah, maybe it was intense, but it was still 2 weeks. Yeah. And obviously she left, so how, it didn't keep her from going to Paris, so that seemed okay. And that, he went back the year afterward to see if she was there. That also was okay. She was 10 years, older, she was, I think in the end it's going to have to come out, but I did think that plan, that the playwright probably figured out how, to me, 2 weeks was just long enough to make it okay, but not totally bizarre.
But still a little icky, but on the verge
definitely,
of surmountable.
Icky.
Right. Overcome that difference.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Very cool. Thank you, Sharon, for sharing that.
Sure.
Nancy, question, comments from Nancy. I'll give Nancy a moment to unmute. While we're waiting for Nancy, I'm wondering for you all what you think the significance was of the final song, the choice of song. Any thoughts on that?
You made me love you.
Yeah, I mean, it seems obvious, but it could be a loaded thing.
I certainly listen to the lyrics in a different way at the end of this. Like, that's of course a song I've heard again and again, and it's just a love song. I didn't want to do it. You made me love you, whatever. But at the end of this play, I listened to it just a little bit more closely, and yeah, it is kind of sad. And the idea of making someone love you, and and even if you're the one, like, even if you force yourself to love someone, or you force yourself to love an idea of someone, there does that idea of being made to, as opposed to falling or being pulled into love, is different than feeling like you're forced into it. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Are there any? I have to tell you, I've never really liked that song. Never been a song that I've been like, oh, my favorites. I love this song. I'm just gonna do it. And it's old. It's from like I think we looked it up earlier. It's like from like 1912, 1913. Like it's been around a long time. This of course is a modern take on it, and I think it feels like they slowed it down a little bit so that you could really listen to those words. But the significance of that being the mother's song, play my song for me, right? Because the You Made Me Want to Love You feels more like the relationship dynamic between Richard and, like,
Can you hear me?
Oh, we got Nancy. Yeah.
Oh,
Nancy.
I don't know what's wrong with my phone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Nancy, we can hear you now. Sorry,
Okay,
Nancy, go ahead.
it was hilarious. I had a bad day today. I had a glass of wine. Something made me laugh. I was really waiting to him to say that she was going to say that he's the father of the child. And I go, oh my God. I had to have something funny to come out today. And, it's like, you guys did a wonderful job. What part of Vancouver? Was it done in Vancouver?
No,
Where
this
was
is the setting is in Toronto.
Oh, it was in Toronto. Okay. Yeah, no, I think she should have told her, and this way they get it over and done with, because Richard was falling in love with, Joe was in love with his mom, it felt like. But how long were they dating for?
Yeah, just that 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks for the first relationship, and what did they say? 8 months that he'd been together with Nikki.
Yeah.
I mean, they were living together. They had this whole life together.
Well,
right?
that's it. Yeah, you never know, things happen, right? But it made me start. I was laughing. My girlfriend and I were laughing away.
Nancy, how would you have felt if your daughter died?
I would be, because I'm older. I would have been shocked. But the thing is, I would have to let her know that I was dating her. Oh my God, my son-in-law. No, I can't do that. That's scary. And then have a child. No, my grandfather married a younger woman, and my dad felt uncomfortable because my dad was older than this lady, and she came when she was 25, and then it was hard because my grandfather just wanted a maid, but he ended up bringing her to Canada, and for us to say grandma to an age that my dad, older, and it's scary. Yeah, I can't say that. I rather get, to be honest, I'd rather get someone to say the truth, let them know ahead of time. So this way she wants to be with me. But if Richard really, really loved her, then it would meant to be. But, maybe Richard's mom or her mother still loved him, right? In 2 weeks.
Who knows?
And the song was excellent.
Yeah.
It was a good ending. It was good. Thank you for cheering me up. I had a bad day, and you guys, I needed this. I need that fun thing to do, and makes me feel better that I can listen to you guys. You guys are wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the play would have taken a drastically different. It would not have been a comedy any longer had we found out that Richard was the father of Nikki.
Oh, no.
Then it goes from comedy to tragedy really quickly.
Very quickly. Very quickly.
Although you know that it has happened in history. Like, you know that it happened.
God. Yeah, I think they did a really nice job of the terror in that moment. Richard, like the true panic. It turned into a little bit of a farce there for a few minutes. And I mean, geez, the panic. It was really good. I like that part.
Well, we're coming close to the end of our time, folks. So if there are any last thoughts from the three of you, I'd love to hear them. And then we're gonna have our prize draw for the evening.
I was triggered in a good way by the little vignette in the Uber when there's that tension, like, are we gonna talk with the driver? This happens so often when I'm in an Uber with my partner, because I'll be in a grumpy, morose mood, and my partner will strike up a conversation with the driver. I'm gonna go inside. I'm going, no, don't engage. And inevitably, it ends up that I end up talking with the driver because they say something that interests me, and I'm diving deep into something my partner doesn't care at all about. And so there's this funny thing that happens in Ubers all the time where I don't want to talk to the driver, but next thing I know, I'm having this super interesting,
to engage or not to engage.
I never want to engage,
the
except
question.
sometimes when I do, amazing things happen. I've had some incredible conversations with Uber drivers.
And sometimes the opposite happens. Sometimes you're like, why did I even say hello? Because it opens a whole ball of wax.
I don't want to hear you complain about your car repair, maintenance, and your gas prices. I'm not interested in
Or
that.
talk about who threw up in your car last night. Now that
actually, that kind of amuses me. I actually do like hearing about that. The train wreck part.
Well, it's nice we can have a little laugh at that, at least. Having experienced a ride share or a taxi ride that's I remember. I just have to tell you. I remember one that it was a. I don't think it was an Uber. I think it was a taxi before we had rideshare here in Vancouver, and I was trying to be converted into a different religion, and the driver had I don't even remember what religion it was, but the driver had a whole bunch of pamphlets and books, and he gave them to me, and I didn't. I took them because I didn't want to be rude, but I had no interest. I'm not even sure it was a religion that I'd ever heard of. It felt kind of culty to me, but I was like, how do I get out of this? So sometimes you have these conversations with people and you're like, I think I have to force myself to be nice and be, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And then just shut up.
Well, you're in their car too. There's this power dynamic that I don't like.
Yes.
Right? It's like being in a doctor's office. You kind of have to be polite.
That's right.
What kind of religion was it?
I don't know, Megan. It was so many years ago now. I don't remember. I don't have the book, but it was a little tiny, thin, like I don't know if anybody remembers being a small child, a young child, and having their first diary. It was a really small, like 4-inch by 4-inch kind of notebook with newsprint kind of paper in it, and it was just chock block full of the tiniest text of this whatever this was. Anyways,
I remember being given a little Bible at some point as a kid. It was one of those tiny with the paper, and I thought I loved the physical book itself. I loved so much. I was determined to read it one page a day every day for the rest of my life, and it lasted an hour and a half. I just I loved the physical item so much, but the book itself, I didn't get into it.
Take it or leave it.
That wasn't a page turner for me.
No.
All right, friends. Well, I just want a big thank you to JJ and Christine who've joined us many times. And Joeita, thank you so much for coming for your first time into the Almost Live space. I hope this won't be the last time. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you. It was so much fun.
Before I officially say good evening or good morning, as it's just past midnight on the East Coast, I would like to do the prize draw. And Joeita, we voluntold you to do it tonight. So let's bring Sarah out from our VocalEye team in the background. And Sarah's got the list of all of the folks still on the call in her database. And so Sarah, Joeita, I leave you two together to do the prize draw.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, hi Joeita. So just whenever you're ready, just shout out a word that floats your boat and I will pick the winner.
Stop.
Okay, we have Ellen Couch.
Oh, Ellen, congratulations, Ellen. You have won a prize this evening. That's my best show host. I'm no Bob Barker or any of those other, folks that host fancy prize shows. But Ellen, I promise you we'll get you a prize and we'll connect with you offline to do that. Thank you, Joeita. Thank you to Christine. Thank you to JJ. I know it won't be the last time you're in the space, but I really appreciate you sharing your lens and your lived experience and your thoughts as we go through these audio plays together. So thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Amy. Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.